All right, everybody, we're going to get moving. Thanks so much for coming out today. It was a much bigger crowd than I expected. So thanks for coming. My name's Kevin, and this is a talk about deceptive technology, which has got a lot of legs right now. But before we get started, I'm a big fan of some of the cybersecurity stock images that end up out there. This one came across my Twitter feed the other day, and the first thing I thought was, honey, is this where we keep all the cyber? All right, just had to say that. So this is the outline. I'll give you who I am, the premise, some ideas on deployment, and then we'll do some demos, hopefully, and we'll do Q&A. So I work for Dick's Sporting Goods. I do security stuff. I'm not really stocking footballs too much. I love mangled packets, insecure direct object references, long walks on the stack. 20 years in InfoSec life, and I've done red, blue, and increasingly orange. Been starting to get involved in a lot of development teams and cloud and that kind of stuff. And I'm a bit of a loudmouth. Done some speaking for B-Sides, Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Spoken at Derbycon before, and done some science classes. And thanks again, Derbycon, for having me back, and for Vanilla Ice last night, which was absolutely awesome. I don't know if anybody saw that, but my voice is a little shot from all the screaming, if you couldn't tell. So I've seen some things, is what all that means. So the premise of this deceptive system. So what are we talking about? It's honeypots. Nothing all that new, right? Stuff has been around for a while, but you see a lot of vendors coming up and saying, hey, we've got this new technology. It's deception. No, it's honeypots. That's what it is. But there's this mantra that we hear, over and over again about, well, you should assume that your network's compromised. And so what does that actually mean? Well, what it means is that the bad guys bypassed your next-gen firewall thingy, they bypassed your next-gen endpoint protection, all the new fancy stuff that everybody's trying to sell you, and they're already in the network. So if they bypassed everything, what do you do? So honeypots are one way to maybe attempt to lure the bad guys out if they are already running around in your network. You really want to entice a threat actor to connect to a seemingly valuable system. So it's not about having a vulnerable system that looks like it could be easily popped. It's about having something that looks really valuable, enough so that a bad guy might come along and actually try to attach to it. And it can help you do some attribution, and it gives you the ability to respond. And I'll show you how some of that works in the demos. So when we talk about deployment, you want these things to get noticed, but not too noticed. You really want it to look like this. This is a good deployment, right? Everybody's singing, dancing, doing the same thing. They all look pretty much the same, but what you don't realize is that Alice in the back, she loves to gossip and tell everybody about what's going on. And that's what you want. You want something that looks legit, but is actually going to squeal on a bad guy. This is a bad deployment. Sticks out like a sore thumb, not blending in with the environment at all. So this is not a good idea. So some deployment do's. Set your traps on sensible subnets. So if you are making a deceptive system that looks like a file server, put it out there with the other file servers. Web server, same thing. Domain controller, same thing. You want to place these deceptive systems in the same places that you have other legitimate systems. You don't want to put them off on their own or anything like that. You want to give them convincing names and convincing attributes. So if you have a standard for naming conventions or whatever, follow it. If you have other attributes that you add to Active Directory for a particular system or a build date or something like that, add that stuff in there. Sprinkle some enticing honey creds and honey documents about things that, once they touch a deceptive system, if they actually go further and open up HoneyDoc, I'll show you an example of that, then that just shows, additional progression and might help you track them down a little better. Continuously improve it, be creative. You do things like, maybe you have some VIPs, map one of their network drives to a deceptive system. And then if that, high value person's system gets compromised, then the first thing the bad guy will do is hopefully go out and start exploring the network shares. And maybe that means that, they touch one of your honeypots. Make it look legit. So some don'ts. Don't make a subnet just for honeypots. That's not going to do you too much good. There's one exception there. If you're going to stand up a fake router, then you might want to do it to make it look like a router at the top of the subnet, like at the top of a /24, if that's typically how your networks are laid out. Don't name them things like CEO never patches or XP legacy, that sort of thing. Don't forget to make a whitelist, because there's probably systems out there that are scanning things like vulnerability scanners or inventory management systems that are constantly combing the network looking for additional new assets. You got to whitelist that stuff, otherwise you're going to get blown up with false positives. And don't set it and forget it. Again, you want to try to continually improve this stuff. Don't do it wrong. I love that GIF. I just love it. Okay. That was pretty quick. We'll move into the demos. Before we start there, anybody have any initial questions or anything like that? Feel free to raise your hand anytime as I'm going through this, and we can get clarification on whatever you need. So none of this is mine. I didn't write any of this code that I'm about to demo here. This is really, all based on the work of other people that I truly respect and appreciate. Thank you to John Strand and Black Hills InfoSec, because those guys created one of the big distributions I'm going to demo here. And thanks to all the open source software developers out there, Thinkst and Promethean especially. So the first demo we'll do is Canary tokens. That's the website. They give you 15 different types of tokens that you can create, and I'll show them to you. It allows you to alert on-prem or in the cloud, and it's free, as in beer. So who's going to scan that for me? Come on, who trusts me? I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy, I promise. So let me pop out of here. So if you were to scan that, come on, Mike, help me out. What will happen is I'll get an alert over on this temporary email address. Well, it looks like somebody did. Thank you. And this is the kind of information that you get back. So you can put whatever you want in here for a reminder, just to, make sure that you understand why you deployed that, what the purpose was, that kind of thing. But you can see you get the source IP. Somebody did this from an iPhone. Cool. Thank you. And that's, QR code. Okay. That might help you for something. But there are some more interesting ones out there. For example, a DNS name. Maybe you want to put a DNS name out there that, lets you know when somebody has done a lookup. Maybe they're combing through, your domains looking for systems or whatever. So that's what the DNS one looks like. Same kind of thing. And then I can show you another cool one. Just going to map this share that I have running on a VM. Oh, it's a share called Secure. Oh boy. Oh, secrets. Yes, I will have all the secrets, please. And you fire that up and it doesn't look like much. You can actually put data in the document if you want. But I got an alert about it. And that's what that looks like. So pretty cool for something that costs $0. This is what the website looks like. You have all these different options at your disposal. The web bug, that's basically a URL. You can do a PDF. You can do an exe if you want to get crazy. All sorts of stuff that you can do for free from these guys. So that's Canary tokens. And that's pretty cool. All right, so the next thing we'll do is ADHD, which stands for Active Defense Harbinger Distribution from Black Hills InfoSec. Again, those guys are awesome. Read the heckin' manual. I tried to do this on a 64-bit system and failed miserably. They tell you, Ubuntu, 32-bit, use it. It will fight with you otherwise. Has all kinds of honeypot tools in there, and we'll go through a few of them here. So, oh wait. The first one we'll look at is Open Canary, and there's a couple of setup things that you have to do to actually get it to run properly. You have to modify that particular file for the correct version. You want to customize to turn on only the services that you want to expose for that particular honeypot, and that's all stored in the .conf file. You can modify smb.conf if you want to stand up a file server, and then you launch it. So this is ADHD. And I will just launch this guy so that you can see what the config looks like. Is that big enough? You guys see that? So, this is essentially your DNS name, and then you can set banners and all that kind of stuff. These banners can be whatever you want. You can turn on different ports. So right here, this is a port 5000 that actually displays a NAS, which is pretty slick. Squid proxy, and then there's a logging system. You can configure where the log files go and all that kind of stuff. Logs are all in a JSON format, so they're easily parsed. You can say, okay, here are the files that I want to put out in the file system. So very, very customizable. You can also set honey creds for certain services. So this is a Cisco Telnet daemon. That's how it identifies. And so we've set honey creds here where we say, okay, well, if the username's admin and password's admin1, then that just means somebody picked up honey creds that I laid somewhere else and tried to use them on this fake router. So let's launch them. And that's kind of what the launch looks like. These are just all the log messages from the service saying, okay, I'm getting ready to go. I will put a live tail on the log file. Okay. So let's come over here. We're going to do an nmap of this system just to see what that looks like. And you'll start to see some things populating over here from the tail as nmap gets going. There we go. Just tried port 22. Nmap is going through its, not just the port scan, but it's attempting different usernames and passwords, just the default stuff that comes out of the box with Nmap. So it's a very noisy scan, but you can see some of the stuff that it's trying to do. You get the user agent for on some of these ports. All right, and there's the Nmap scan. Now, like I said, you don't want this to be ugly and crazy looking. This is intentionally ugly and crazy looking because I wanted to show you some of the different services that are available. So, like I said, if you're trying to make a specific looking device, you don't want to turn on every single possible port. But I've done that here for demo purposes. And so because of it, some of the OS detection that Nmap has gets a little weird. This looks like a Windows box. It looks like a Cisco router. It looks like an Ubuntu box. We're running Apache over here. So there's all sorts of nonsense, but that's really because I've turned this on to make it look as crazy as possible. See, there's our SQL server that's of course running on the router. So it looks like a pretty good Cisco router there, and I'm just going to fail. But the log message that actually comes across where it'll tell you, what username and password were attempted. And that one was not a honeycred. Honeycred is false. But if I came over and did the one that we had set, then honeycred equals true. So that's pretty cool. And then, if you want to try to FTP to it, looks like it looks like an FTP server. And it's just going to say, okay, you're logging in as anonymous. That's cool. Tell me something more. And it's just going to fail. So it doesn't try to keep you tricked for very long. There's not a ton, it doesn't go super deep in some cases. But it might be enough just to create an alert, that you would be interested in. Here's that, Synology NAS hanging out there. Same thing, It's just going to fail. But you'll catch that, and the source IP and all of it. So that's pretty neat. What else can I show you? Yeah, we see that the Samba server's listening. The proxy really doesn't do much. This is all just trying to make a system look enticing to the bad guy. That's the whole idea. So that's very cool. It's really cool. Okay. So then the next one I'll do, and I'm really flying through this, I apologize. We'll look at Honey Badger Red. There's no additional config required out of the box from ADHD. This is just running there by default. It's got really crazy attribution, and it's a little bit of legal hacking back. So what happens here is Honey Badger Red will actually show you on a map where your attacker's coming from. And so it does that by figuring out a location, which has been determined legal in the courts. It's about as the only type of hacking back that you could do to a bad guy. And then there are some limitations with the system. So if you have an attacker who is not using wireless or doesn't have a wireless card available on their system, this isn't going to work so well because it's really using a Wi-Fi site survey to do its thing. So if they're using a VM, for example, they might not have a Wi-Fi adapter and they might not actually do a site survey. So I'll show you how this works. And you're going to see a whole bunch of messages about old versions of this and that, and that's intentional. I got ancient Java on here. Okay. So first thing we do is we say, hey, give me your location. No, I'm not going to allow that. I'm not completely dumb. But imagine, if you will, that this is the world's most convincing VPN portal. Okay, I'm terrible at web design, so I didn't even try. But, you know, you see a lot of VPN portals out there that require a client download, that, you know, so that you can actually get into the VPN. So if we made this look really, really good, maybe we could convince the bad guy to actually download the Java client so that they can attempt to log into our VPN portal. So Firefox is like, hey, do you want some Java? I'm like, oh yeah. Yes, I do. I'm going to get into this system. And of course, Java is going to complain about being out of date, because when is Java not out of date? So bad guy gets this message here. You know, do you want to run this thing? Well, this is my super cool VPN client, and hey man, the publisher is a verified code certificate. Seems legit, you know. So we'll just go run that. Womp womp. Nothing happened. Okay, well, I guess I'm just going to have to try another way in. However, what they don't know is that back here, just pull up the main console, like this is the good guy console now. Don't say the password, please. Okay, and this should load up in a minute. So this is our there we go. So this is our map. I used to live in Pittsburgh, so this is when I was testing around at work in places in Pittsburgh. I now live in Columbus, so there's me testing it from my house. And I did a demo like this in Indianapolis for Circle City Con, and this right here is us. This is the pin that we just put down. So let's see if it's accurate at all. Zoom in a little bit. We're getting pretty close. What do you think? Is that accurate? I don't know. So what just happened was, when I executed the Java client, or the Java app, which was not a VPN client, but we would want it to make it look like that. What happened was, my system did a Wi-Fi site survey and figured out all the access points around me, and then sent that up to Google, and Google came back with a location. Super slick. So even if I'm behind 9 proxies, if I'm dumb enough to have my Wi-Fi turned on, that's not really going to help from a location standpoint. And you can see now, you know, this is internal IP address, because I'm doing this all on VMs. But if this was sitting on the internet for somebody to actually come and touch, you're going to get source IP as well. And it even gives you, you know, the lat and longitude and an accuracy rating for how well it thinks it did on that particular trick. So pretty good. And then there are some other options too. There's a .doc file that you can get, an HTA launcher, PowerShell script, Bash script. All of them do the same thing. So, you know, you could lay these types of traps on, you know, on an external facing website or something like that. And if somebody's looking around going places that they shouldn't be going, then you'll get an alert pin on the page, just like I showed. And when I saw John Strand do this demo at B-Sides Cleveland a couple years ago, he told a story about how they stood this up externally at a bank in Germany, and within 24 hours they had like 30 pins all over the map. So people do fall for it. You know, if you make it convincing enough, they'll fall for it. So that's like deal with it cool, okay? That's like deal with it. It's way too cool. man, we got to watch it twice. All right. All right. So you might be like, whoa, man. And that's my kid. And I think it's really weird that, he looks very similar to Ben 10's, GitHub profile picture. So a lot of info, a little bit, mind blowing. I thought it was anyway. But that's pretty much my presentation. So do you have any questions other than why is this man vacuuming the desert with, and it looks like the thing's plugged in too. In the back.
All right, I'll try to be honest. In your open canary demo, and it was able to tell if it was using a honey thread or not. Is there any reason not to then have that tie back to your directory service and see if it actually is a hit for a legitimate thread and like not have to account or that sort of thing?
So the question was, the on the Honeycred demo, is there a way to tie back the Honeycreds configured in Open Canary to an actual directory server? And I don't believe so. Especially because that one's only works on the router module, and that thing doesn't have a ton of capabilities as far as talking back to directory server. Now, this is all, just Python. So I think it's the kind of thing that with some additional development, somebody might actually be able to do that. So we'll see. I haven't seen a ton of updates, to Open Canary. But that's not to say that won't happen. Before I totally wrap it up here, since we have a little bit of time, let me just show you some of the other ones that are available. So in ADHD, all of the honeypot stuff is in /opt. And if you take a look, there's some interesting stuff here. Artillery, that's a tool released by Binary Defense. That one works a little differently, where it's sitting there listening on open ports, and if it sees somebody touch one of the open ports, it just immediately bans that system, adds it to a block list, because you just shouldn't be touching that system, period. It's a deceptive system. Beef, that's the browser exploitation framework. If you want to hook a bad guy's browser and watch what they're doing, you can do that. There's all kinds of interesting stuff in here. Recon NG, OpenBack, which is, really slick for like ICS type stuff. So, plenty of things to look at in here. It's all maintained in a single distribution. That's what's great, is, they're constantly updating this thing, adding, additional, tools and that sort of stuff. So you can really just go to one place, pull down the distro, and, easily deploy whatever you want to do. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, up front.
From a red team perspective, what's the best way to detect when something like this begins? Are there any common fingerprints for these ISOs that I can?
Yeah, I mean, if some of the stuff, if the person who configured it was a little lazy, and maybe had more than one port open, then that's going to allow Nmap's OS detection to work a little better. So you could end up seeing some of the weird stuff that you see here, where it's like, let's see, like right here, it's clearly saying this is Linux, but we're still coming back and saying Windows, and you got your SMB OS discovery is Windows. Like there's definitely some fishiness there. So again, a lot of this can be tightly configured, but if somebody makes a little mistake, you could end up with some telltale signs. Yes?
Have you done anything with like honey emails? I had an organization I was working with that actually, they kept getting hit by the same phishing group, and they would always iterate over the top of a mail list, basically. So they set like Aaron ABAC or whatever was the honey email name. To my knowledge, though, they were never able to figure out a way that they would alert them if there was a touch, other than logging in and seeing if stuff was being sent to it or from it. Do you know if there's anything in these functionalities that would help with something like that?
I do not. So the question was around honey emails. Is there, the ability to set up honey emails? Not within, the canary tokens, and I don't believe, oh, I was wrong. Unique email address. So if somebody touches a unique email address, but that's a little different than the use case you were talking about. So you could configure an email address that if it gets an email, it makes an alert. But, for that particular use case, I'm not sure if that would help. Any other questions? Yeah. That's correct. Yeah, that was actually a case that was tried. It was a situation where a computer was stolen, like a laptop was stolen, and the organization had used IP address location, and there was like a client, like a LoJat type client on the laptop that would just broadcast its location via GPS and via IP address. And it went to court because they were essentially saying, well, you hacked me, and the answer was no, not for the purposes of location only. Running malicious code, taking pictures even might be problematic, but that one case of location was okay. Yeah, by the U.S. courts. Now, I'm not sure about other countries, but U.S. courts, they've tried this and they said, yeah, location's okay.
Was there a difference? You talked about this when they lost one of their own machines, and they did this to one of their own machines that somebody else had in possession.
Yeah.
So did the court say it was based on that it was their machine initially, or was it actually your blanket saying it's okay to figure out where this is coming from?
I guess in that case the system was stolen and sold to somebody else, and that it was that person who was like the new owner didn't realize that it was a stolen system, and they were able to use that technology to ultimately determine location. So originally it was theirs, but the person who had it didn't. Yeah, they didn't really know. Way in the back. Yeah, this, that Nmap scan that I did against Open Canary right there was well aware that there was Nmap going on, made a lot of noise about it. Artillery as well, it would be a good tool for that, because it'll, you're not, that's the supposition there is that, none of the ports that are configured to be open on artillery should ever be touched. And if somebody comes along with a noisy Nmap and, bumps into one of them, then that's going to make an alert for you.
What if it's like a half handshake or something?
The scan that I did there was a SYN scan. Now the -A adds the additional, like, trying to do OS detection, which requires the full handshake. But that initial half open scan did get detected on a few of those ports. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, one more.
Have you done anything taking the logs from the honeypots and over your SIM for alerting, or?
That's something that we're working on now. It's definitely not crazy to do, because the logs are JSON, so as far as parsing them goes, and it's just a Linux system, so you can forward them off via syslog or however you want to do that. The whole thing is, if this is deployed right, you should never hear from these things, and if you do, now you're in some trouble. So those alerts that would go over to the SIM should be relatively good from a blue team perspective. Yes.
Have you seen any honeypots creating ED objects and imitating how it works?
I'm sorry, imitating. Yeah, you can add the Open Canary stuff to AD. You can add them as AD objects so that they're shown as valid systems, and you actually want to do that because they have a better chance of actually getting touched. All right, well, if anybody thinks of other questions or you just want to chit-chat about the topic a little more, I'll be in the lobby, and there's my other info. Please feel free to reach out, and thanks again for coming today.